this has been sort of simmering. This whole story has been sort of simmering. Maybe not simmering, but yes, I get to say it's been simmering for at least 6 or 7 or 8 months or right now. And this is something you heard Matt talk about earlier. You may have read the papers about this DJ, Alzy, down here in the Cape, who's over there at a restaurant here on the Cape over on North Street. And going back and, something happened with back in May, the end of May, he was in the bar. And apparently, according to him, they got in a little bit of an argument. And some police officers that were here off duty, the annual spring convention of the New England Narcotic Officers Association, were down here, staying over on the Cape. And that apparently Alzy got in a little altercation with one of these guys. He probably didn't know he's a police officer. Maybe he did. About a woman or whatever it might be. It escalated into a fight. Alzy was knocked to the floor, he said, punched and kicked. And when he stood up, he was hit again. He tried to escape, but if you remember the whole story, according to him, the officers prevented him from leaving the building because he had picked up a cell phone from one of the alleged attackers. He turned the phone over to the cops, to the Barnstable police. He was treated that night for broken bones around his right eye and around his navel cavity and all that. He said he got beat up by 3 officers that were down here on a convention. Well, that went to a hearing in November, and the clerk magistrate decided that there was insufficient evidence to issue charges against the 3 police officers. Well, the district attorney and the Barnstable Police Department decided to. They said, "Hey, wait a minute, whoa!" They decided to appeal that decision, and now they're coming up on Friday. There's going to be another hearing in front of Judge O'Neill relative to the amount of evidence that the district attorney's office said and the Barnstable Police Department against these cops that were down here on the for the spring convention. The question I have is this, everyone. The newspaper article, meanwhile, focuses a lot about will the public be able to attend this in the press? And the judges come down and say, yeah, we'll have the public comment on this thing. My question is this, everyone. 2 things. Why don't we know who the accused, alleged police officers are? What are their names? Where are they from? What do they do? If they're involved with narcotics, for a police department, are they state cops? Are they cops from New Bedford? Are they cops from Medford? Why don't we know the names of the cops and the force and where they serve and where they work? That's number 1. Number 2, this happened in May. Let's see, June, July, August, September, October. 6 months later, there's a hearing in front of a clerk magistrate? Are you trying to tell me that if I was at a sports bar and 3 guys didn't like me, came up and started kicking the heck out of me, punching me in the face, and we have an altercation, that we wouldn't have an adjudication before a clerk magistrate before 6 months were up? So I'm just asking, is this normal, or is this because the alleged attackers were cops? Matt, just a quick question. Is Maddie in the newsroom? Maddie, quick question about this from a point of view of covering the story.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we know who the 3 police officers are that have been accused of doing this?
Well, they have been hearings. There have been many hearings, actually. There were several days of hearings. I actually saw Alzy in court some time ago.
In November.
Right, and so that was a closed-door hearing. So
right.
It wasn't the public and the press weren't allowed into them, so therefore names aren't coming out at this point. So,
well, I mean, somebody's got to. The Barnstable police officers know who's the accused. The district attorney knows who's been accused. Why don't we find out where these cops are from? Now, they're alleged, they're allegations. I mean, we can say all of that, but don't you think if these were Joe Normal guys, it would be Ed Lambert, Jim Kane, and Matt Pitta beat up Alzy pretty bad?
Well, we're going to find out.
Do you know what I mean?
We're going to find out on Friday, for sure. But, no, I mean, I think you raise an interesting question.
Number 1, 6 months before they go in front of a clerk magistrate. That's number 1. Number 2 is, who are they? We know who Alzy is. He's the one that got beat up, he said, by the cops. And he said a bunch of cops were there. They were all attending that convention down here. And these 3 cops, he knows who they are. They got their names. They got one of the guy's cell phones even, for crying out loud.
Well, that's pretty much how they're able to get to them, yeah.
So who are they? And why don't we know? It sort of bothers me a little bit. Doesn't it bother you guys? I mean, I'm serious. Is it because they're cops? Is it because these guys work undercover, Ed, and we can't tell you their names because they're undercover narcotics cops on the police force in New Bedford. But there's got to be some explanation because these guys are going to be in court and someone's got to be defending them. How come we haven't heard about the defense? Who are the defense attorneys representing these three guys? Something screwy here, don't you think? 508-775-9985. Our toll-free phone number is 1-888-WXTK-951. Cell phone in the car. John, good morning. You're on XTK. How you doing, John?
Ed, you answered your own question and mine. They're undercover.
So that's the reason you think?
I did. So.
Well, that's the only logical thing I can come up with, because otherwise they're treating these guys like royalty. I mean, anybody that's been accused of doing what they did to Alzy and at the sports bar, I mean, their names would be all over the place. We'd know the names of their attorneys. We'd know the names of them, what police force they work on, how old they are, et cetera, et cetera. That type of thing.
Well, I mean, the police, the policeman is kind of a little protected class there. I mean, they jump all over the average citizen, but when they wreck their cars and so forth and so on, they wreck their cars and that's it.
Well, no, the guy down in Truro lost his job, basically. He got his pension, but he lost his job for wrecking the car.
That's the big thing, the pension.
All right, so you're thinking like I'm thinking, that these guys might be undercover narcotics cops with New Bedford or with Winchester Police Department or something, and the reason that the press or the attorneys or no one will even ask who they are is because they're telling you right up front, and I haven't heard this, by the way, John, that they're narcotics guys.
Yeah.
We can't tell you who they are.
As Matt says, they're going to be at that hearing, right? The cover's going to be blown Friday, right?
Well, why don't? Yeah, I'd love to know now who they are.
Well, they may not even show up, do they?
No, they can have an attorney show up to represent them, but you would think that the district attorney, in presenting evidence on what happened, on probable cause and appealing the probable cause, everybody knows who they are. The ADA knows who they are.
Yeah.
The cops.
Well, it may come out eventually, but they may not even show up Friday. They may have their own attorney there, and I bet there's a police department attorney there also.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm just. Thanks very much for the call, John. I guess what I'm bringing up more than anything else is this sounds like special treatment. And I'll write out and say it sounds like cop special treatment. If you're a cop, you'd treat it differently than if you are a civilian, not a cop. There's got to be a reason for it. Otherwise, it's special treatment. Now, granted, the district attorney's office apparently and the Barnstable Police Department. I mean, when the guy said who was kicked and punched and everything else, the police department in Barnstable, with all kudos to them, went ahead and tried to find out what was going on. All right, so they didn't back away from this, but someone is. And the district attorney and everybody else over there apparently have said they're not going along with the clerk magistrate's decision from a November 10th hearing that he said we didn't have insufficient evidence. The DA said that's not true, and they want to go after him, and so did the Barnstable Police Department. We'll see what happens, huh? On Friday, the Cape and Islands district attorney also said to the judge they have no problem with the hearing being open. We're not talking about a position on an issue. We certainly do not object if the trier of facts, the judge in this case, decides the public should have access. And that's what the judge has decided. So maybe we'll find out. Maddie, are you going to send anybody there, or are you going to go to that on Friday, the hearing in front of Judge O'Neill?
Yeah, we'll get it covered.
Okay, good enough. Will you give me the names of the guys?
No, I'm not going to let you know. I'll put it in the newscast, but I'm not going to tell you.
So I'll have to listen to the newscast of who these cops were, how old they are,
that's right,
and what force they work on.
Correct.
Thanks. 508-775-9985. Our toll-free phone number is 1-888-WXTK-951. Sure sounds to me like do you know who I am? Keep your mouth shut. I'm a cop. ABC show. I'm not sure what